Hello there, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Today I will be covering Celtic and folk tales from Waterford in Ireland. As I say, this is something that this is a variety channel, and this is something that I chose to do this evening here. So first off, I just want to quickly say welcome to everyone. Thank you, Miss Sweetie. Thank you for tuning in. And Paulie, good man, always to see you as always. Thank you, sir. As I say, with this live, I don't expect too many questions, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I will answer them. What I want to do now is just basically give you a bit of a backdrop. As you probably gathered, so my heritage is of Irish, and it is from Waterford, Dungarvan, and Stradbally. So I'm just want to take this opportunity just to go through a few stories that I've hand selected. But before I do that, I just want to give everyone a backdrop of Waterford. Hello there, Safari Dream. Thank you for turning up. Thank you. Good to see you as always. I really appreciate you being here. So first off, here we go. Hello everyone. Welcome. Today's live, I will be talking about Waterford folk tales. Now, I want to share this with you because, as some of you may be aware, I do have Irish heritage and I have relations in Ireland. Now, Waterford is a city in County Waterford in the southeast of Ireland. It is located within the province of Munster, and the city is situated at the head of Waterford Harbour. It is the oldest and the fifth most populous city in the Republic of Ireland. It is the ninth most populous settlement on the island of Ireland. Now, historically, the site of a Viking settlement, Waterford's medieval defensive walls and fortifications include the 13th century Reginald Tower. Now, the medieval city was attacked several times and earned the motto, the Untaken City, after repelling one such 15th century siege. Waterford is known for its former glass-making industry, including at the Waterford Crystal Factory, with decorative glass being manufactured in the city from 1783 until early 2009. Now, the history of Waterford comes from the Old Norse, and the Irish name is Port Lag. Viking raiders first established a settlement near Waterford in 853. It and the other long ports were vacated in 902, the Vikings having been driven out by the native Irish. The Vikings re-established themselves in Ireland at Waterford in 914, led by Jarl Otter, until 917. And after that by Ragnar Eima and the Eima dynasty, and built what would be Ireland's first city. Among the most prominent rulers of Waterford was Ivor of Waterford. In 1167, Dermot mac Murchada, the deposed king of Leinster, failed in an attempt to take Waterford. He returned in 1170 with Cambro-Norman mercenaries under Richard de Clare, the second Earl of Pembroke, known as Strongborough. Together, they besieged and took the city after a desperate defence. In furtherance of the Norman invasion of Ireland, King Henry II of England landed at Waterford in 1171. Waterford and then Dublin were declared royal cities, with Dublin also declared the capital of Ireland. Reginald's Tower, built after the Anglo-Norman invasion of Ireland on the site of an earlier fortification and retaining its Viking name, was one of the first in Ireland to use mortar in its construction. Throughout the medieval period, Waterford was Ireland's second city after Dublin. In the 15th century, Waterford repelled sieges by two pretenders to the English throne, Lambert Simnel and Perkin Warbeck. As a result, King Henry VII gave the city its motto, Waterford remains an untouched city. After the Protestant Reformation, Waterford remained a Catholic city and participated in the Confederation of Kilkenny, an independent Catholic government from 1642 to 1649. This was ended abruptly by Oliver Cromwell, who brought the country back under English rule. His son-in-law, Henry Ireton, finally took Waterford in 1650 after two major sieges. In 1690, during the Williamite War, the Jacobite Irish army was forced to surrender Waterford in the wake of the Battle of Boyne. The 18th century was a period of huge prosperity for Waterford. Many of the city's architecturally notable buildings appeared during this time. A permanent military presence was established in the city with the completion of the cavalry barracks at the end of the 18th century. In the early 19th century, Waterford was deemed vulnerable, and the British government erected 3 Martello towers on the Hook Peninsula to reinforce the existing fort of Duncannon. During the 19th century, industries such as glassmaking and shipbuilding thrived in the city. Now, today, I want to go and tell you all about 3 folk tales from Waterford. And the 3 tales will be the 3 sisters, the river goddesses, the well and the golden dragon, and Umpa Amala. Please enjoy the show, and thank you for viewing. Hello there, everyone. Okay, I hope you got that, so you got a good understanding of what I'll be going through. I just want to quickly catch up with the chat. So, okay, Safari Dream. Yeah, okay, you had to come and see your cuz because family is in Belfast. Oh, excellent. Hello there, Suzanne. Thank you for coming. Good to see you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to get to it. So the first one will be the 3 sisters, the river goddesses. So, as I say, I'm going to be reading this from the text, but I will answer any questions at some point. But as I've said earlier, I don't imagine to get too many questions on this. So, the story is based on an old mythology, okay, but according to the Annals of Leinster, it is not necessarily correct in detail. Now, as our mothers would say, what did they know? It is in my own belief that the story was told in the following manner for a different reason: earth and nature worship. You'll see why we think this. Hello there, Tommy. Thank you for coming. Good to see you. Now, in the very early years of the settlement by different peoples, this country of Ireland had a very different way of working. People were very tribal, and little communities had their own traditions and ways of doing things. Not least of these was the act of worship. Man has always believed in power or powers greater than themselves. So there were some worshippers, nature worship, and many other different paths followed. Most places had sacred sites and followed the gods or goddesses of that place. They had sacred oak groves, sacred wells and rivers and high places. These places of worship and respect were everywhere. They needed all these places for their day-to-day living. They believed in their own dependence on the goodwill of the deities for their own health and wealth and that of the animals and land. Now, well, we all understand now that to believe in something gives it power, and so it did then. Now, I do not recall when I first heard this story, but it was a long time ago, and for such a simple story set so long ago, it was often caused people to get annoyed because they had heard it differently. Now, well, so you've, as I mentioned there, however, that in our own memory of the story and the Marta Bragg, which is basically, I won't pronounce the whole caption, but this is my story, and if there is a lie in it, it is not I who first told or thought of it. Look back with me now and see how then and now in the southeast of the country, 3 rivers flow through different landscapes until they came together in a great surge before going out to join the sea in one great rush. They meet the sea at the place we call Dunmore East. They are now called the Sawyer, the Nore and the Barrow, and are known far and wide as three sisters. Long ago, they had other names, and each one had a resident goddess. These goddesses were sisters and were called Eru, Bamba, and Fola. Each goddess had their own worshippers and followers in their own regions and accepted due reverences from them. In return, they saw it that the lands were never flooded more than their people could cope with. Also, they provided fish, fowl, and tubers of various riverbank reeds and plants. They were a highway, a means of transport for routine living of all who called on them. Sure, there were no roads, only tracks, so travel on the rivers was very widely used. Their banks were lush and fertile, and great stands of forest spread out between them. Now, I told you already that they were three sisters, and you probably know sisters sometimes disagree. So you had, as I mentioned, Era, Bamba, and Fola were no different, even though they were goddesses. In fact, they were probably much more dangerous. It seems that they were often in dispute as to which one of them was the greatest, wisest, and most beautiful, and had the most followers. Sounds like TikTok. Now, you know how these things go. Being very busy in their own ways, they took little or no interest in the punny wars and disagreements of mortals until it became apparent that they were losing followers. A war was being waged between the resident peoples, called the Tuhat Danann, an invading force as the Marcians. The three sisters took this personally and decided to go and take a look at what was happening. Together they stood up on the headland and were astonished to see a huge spread of invading fleet stretching out along the coast. They were surprised also to note that among the invaders were some who had mystical powers. Era, Bamba, and Fola had led a sheltered existence and never gave much thought to the powers others might master. As they watched the attempts being made by the invaders to land and secure a toehold on the shore, they understood that the Tuhat Danann were not going to win this battle. Once this happened, the new mystical power might very well overthrow their territories. It was not their habit to interfere with the wars of men, but they felt something must be done to safeguard their own sanctuary and their followers. Hello there, Gina. Thank you for coming. Okay. Now, by means available to goddesses, they were able to find out that the most powerful druid among the invading forces was one called Mergin. Every time the ships were driven back by the storm winds sent by the Tuhat Danann, Mergin rallied the ships, and again they came up against the shore. Being the sons of Mil, the Milesians were never going to give up. The three sisters gathered together fearfully and decided that something had to be done. Together they waited until the druids of the Tuhat Danann were exhausted and their people withdrew from the fight. Then together they went to shore and watched Mergin as he came forward. Alone in a small craft, he showed no fear, and they drew on all the power within them as he advanced. When he set foot on the sandy beach, a shiver of fear coursed through them. Here was power indeed. As he approached them, Era stepped forward and asked what business he had landing here. His answer was simple. We cannot go back. We bring our women and children. Our wish is to settle here in peace. You have killed our followers. What? We do not want you here, said Era. She looked back at her sisters and they nodded in agreement. Mergin tried a different way. Let us walk a little way and discuss the problem. I am wary from being tossed about on the waves. Eru walked with him. They talked for a time, and then Mergin made his best offer. My people will replace the followers you have lost, and will call this land in your name, if you agree to let us come here peacefully. Eru thought about it for a little and saw no reason to say no. She was secretly delighted that she had been the one to speak with Mergin first. She would be known forever by his followers. It pleases me, but I must ask my sisters, she said. Mergin was wiser than he looked, so he said immediately, I do not wish to cause any upset between you and your sisters, so perhaps it would be best if I spoke to each one separately. Then they cannot blame you for making the decision." Era was grateful, for she did not see her sisters agreeing to this very easily. "It shall be so," she said regularly, and walked tall as she went up to the beach beside Mergin. Bamber next walked with Mergin, and again he put the proposal to her, but this time he offered to replace her followers with his own people, and that he would call the country in the name of Bamber. Bamber looked out at the multitude of people still waiting to land and thought she would have more followers than anyone, and she too nodded her agreement. Last of all was Fola. Walked the golden sands with Mergin. She came to an agreement with him, except that he would have his people become her followers, and the land we called in her name of Fola. The sisters all secretly rejoiced that they had outwitted the others, each one believing that their name would be the one which they had all the new followers, and they would have the whole land named for them. They withdrew to their respective territories in the Soya, the Nor, the Barrow, to await developments. Well, Mergin had not made it any promise he could not keep. As his people came to the land in their thousands, he divided them into 3 groups. The first group he instructed that they should settle around the land of the river Sur, and they would call this country Eru. The second group he sent to the area around the river Nor, and they must call this country Bamber. And the last group were, of course, sent around to the river Barrow, and they were to call the country Bola. So it was. Whether the 3 sisters were angry or not, I can tell you, but as time went by and the seasons turned, the new invaders settled, worshipped the local gods and goddesses, and revered the sacred places. Time is the great changer. So slowly, people began to forget the old ways. The only sure thing that now remains is the fact that Ireland is still referred to in writings and memory of Aya, Bamber, and Fola. Now, the River Soya rises in the Silvermine Mountains in Tipperary. It floods down past the towns of Thurles, Holy Cross, Cahir Clonmel, Carrick-on-Suir, and the city of Waterford, before joining with its sister rivers near Cheek Point. They then race away together to meet the sea. The pet name for the Soya in Waterford is the Key River. The Soya is tidal up past Carrick-on-Suir, where it turns and sometimes causes flooding. The Nor rises on the eastern slopes of the Devil's Bit Mountain in North Tipperary. It takes a roundabout path through Darragh and Co, Laois, and then on through Kilkenny, Thomastown, and Instead, where it becomes tidal. It joins with the River Barrow and above New Ross, and together they flow out to join the Soya below the Barrow Bridge near Cheek Point. The Barrow is the longest and the most prominent of the 3 rivers. It rises on the northern end of the Slieve Bloom Mountains in Count Laois. It passes through Portarlington, Athy, Carlow, and Griegamana and New Ross. The Barrow is tidal up as far as St. Mullins. Okay, so that was story 1. Now I'm going to, hello there, all these years later, and we're still worried about gaining followers. Yeah, well, nothing's changed there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to get ready for the second story. Right, the second story, The Well and the Golden Dragon. Here we go. As a young married man and his wife once went out to gather rushes for Lefela Bridge, which is St. Bridget's Day. They knew where some fine, strong rushes grew. They were nice, plump rushes and the very best quality. They had seen them several times as they walked through the woods in Ballacaheen. The rushes were to be used for making St. Bridget's crosses. which are traditionally made to hang behind the doors and ward off danger and sickness. The farmers like to hang them in the cow houses and barns as well. St. Bridget was great for blessing the animals and also said to be strong protection against fire. The young married man and his wife talked about the making of the crosses and how they needed for the family and friends. It was a good thing to do together, and the carrying on of the tradition was important to them. It would have to be done smartly now because it would be dark early. The crosses had to be made and placed outside the door in the basket, for the tradition was that St. Bridget would pass by each house after dark and bless the crosses and ribbons in the basket. The ribbons were used to prevent headaches, and since long ago, every household had a blessed ribbon which would be bound around the head to cure the headache. As they drew near the place they were seeking, the evening was quiet and still. St. Bridget's Eve is the last day of January, and it can be cold and even snowy at times. The clumps of rushes were there in all their glory, the longest and finest rushes they had ever seen. The only problem was that they were sighted beyond a deep pool of water. They stood on the pathway for a minute or two, trying to figure out how to reach them. Not a leaf stirred, only the shrill call of the blackbird echoed through the valley. The woman shivered. The blackbird is a bird with a threshold between this world and the next, and she knew this. It was getting late, so she hurried her husband. He took a flying leap and landed on the solid raised grass turf near the rushes. He bent, and with a quick slicing movement, he cut back through a bunch of rushes. The blackbird shrilled again, and the woman suddenly felt very uneasy. "Come back here quick," she called. He looked up, startled, but seeing her face, made the jump and landed beside her. "What is it?" he asked, but she didn't answer him, only grabbed his arm and began to drag him quickly along the path. Now the silence which had hung over the woods was gone. There was a shifting and rustling all around them, sounds they could not identify, painting and snuffling. As they hurried along the pathway, so did the sounds all around them. To one side, it seemed that something huge and lumbering was keeping pace with them. In the end, out of breath and very frightened, they stopped. Whatever it was, they did not want to have it follow them home. The woman called out, "We meant no harm. We only come for the rushes, for the Lafahir bride, the Noima bride, the holy woman Bridget. We meant no harm." The rustling and movement all around them stopped. All that they could hear now was their own rapid breathing and something like a sigh, a deep, ancient sounding sigh. It seemed to come from the very earth itself. It was then that the woman saw them. On the path ahead stood a strongly healthy fox. To the right-hand side of it stood a tall brown bear. And on the left-hand side, half lost in the trees, stood a great golden dragon. "We are the guardians of the sacred place," the voice was deep and purring. The dragon's eyes glowed green and gold. "You may not take anything from there, but we know of Bridget. In her name, we allow you to live in peace." The woman's voice came in a whisper. "We cannot undo what we've done. We are sorry. We will make an offering instead, if that is acceptable." There was a long silence, and then, even as she watched the guardians of the sacred place shimmered and withdrew, she scrabbled her pocket and took out a precious stone, which she always carried, and urgently asked her husband for a silver coin. Together they went back to the place from whence they had cut the rushes, and as the sun slanted through the trees, making the water sparkle, they dropped it into a precious stone and the silver coin. A deep sigh seemed to breathe through the quiet clearing. As far off they heard the blackbird trill a different note. Together they walked through the water and the trees, and no word passed between them. The making of the crosses took place in silence. Also, it was only when the rush crosses were placed safely in the basket outside the door, they felt able to speak about what had happened. In the years that followed, they often visited the holy site and dropped offerings in the water. Sometimes they felt the presence of others, and once a wolf made his appearance as they stood in silent communion. Blessings were sought and given, and once on a winter's evening, when snowflakes floated down softly down, the man sang a great song of praise that thrilled and echoed through the valley, and the world stopped listening. Imbolc is celebrated at the same time as St. Bridget's Day. It celebrates the coming of spring and is the time of preparation for the tilling and sowing. In olden times, it was Bridget, daughter of the father god, Dagda, who was invoked for the blessings on crops and animals. Bridget is honoured in many lands, but in Ireland we claim her as our own, even though it appears that there have been many holy women called Bridget or Bridget who have succeeded her down the Christian times. Well, what do we know? Anything is possible. So for fear of fear, or just in case, we still invoke the blessing of our present day Saint Bridget. The tradition of making St. Bridget's crosses is still strong in County Waterford. Many schools are called after the saint, and it's usual for schools, especially country schools, to teach the children how to make the cross bread. There is a St. Bridget's well, and that's in Toberbread, located in Dungarvan. It is the well from which the distillery known as St. Bridget's Well Distillery draws its water. In recent times, a lovely bronze sculpture of a child lying on a granite rock who appears to be trying to reach into a rain-filled pool, where there is a stone carved with a cross bridge. This has been set near St. Bridget's Well housing development, and the piece is, as I say, it's called Taho Brehed, and it is Clihed Kusun. Okay, to give my pronunciations. So that, as I say, that was the Golden Dragon. Hello there, ALV. Thank you for coming in. Good to see you, sir. Excellent. Okay. So as I say, I know this is more of a listening exercise, but please feel free if you want to ask any questions, go for it. Okay, now we'll be going on to our third story. Okay, here we go. Hello, Patrick. Thank you for coming. The third story. Okay, Umpa Amala, the bag carrier. There's an old fence in the parish of Dunhill, a boundary between three townlands, Dunhill, Ballyphillip, and the high place of the river. There is a stream running the stream running by the side of it, and there's a terrible damage when the stream floods. It was during a flood that the bag carrier was drowned. His ghost used to be seen there at night, and fear prevented anyone from travelling there after nightfall. Now there was a farmer in the area, Shula Bocht, a poor student who come to his house at various times to teach his children. He used to come to the house by crossing the haunted river. One night, the farmer bet the poor student £1 that he would not go back across the river. It's a bet, said the student. It was a beautiful moonlit night. Down went the poor student to the fence of the three boundaries. While the farmer and his sons watched from afar, the student crossed the river, but who was standing on a stone in front of him? The bag carrier. The farmer and his sons saw the spirit off. They took as fast as their legs could move the earth underneath them. Inamida, said the student to the carrier. It is a long time I'm here, said the spirit, and no one has ever had the courage to speak to me. But there's an end to the penance. Come with me now, and I'll show you something that will do you good. The carrier brought him to a stile in the fence. Up they went to the path, and at the top of the fence, in they went to Ballyphillip Hill. Put a stick in there, said the carrier to him, and his finger pointing at a certain sod on the side of the hill. Dig that place and you'll find a crock of gold. But you don't need to spend any of it, because I'm damned. When I was drowning and the stone went from under my foot, when I said was Manam and Dibal, my soul to the devil, instead of Mahan on Dibal, so save my soul to the devil. That's a mistake I made, and I'm paying for it dearly. The same night, the student got a pick and a shovel and started to dig where he was shown, and sure enough, the crock of gold was there. The following day, he went to the parish priest in Dunhill and asked him to say mass on a certain Sunday for the soul of the bag carrier. After that, he went around to every priest in the area and they gave them money for the same cause. All the masses were to be said on the same Sunday. He stayed going around from priest to priest until the money was spent. When that was done, he made his way back home. It was a stormy night and he was crossing the path where there is now a bridge on the road between Fenner and Ballydan. But there was no bridge there this time, only a path going over the path. What did he see under the fence but a man and a poor appearance on him? "Inami there," said Shulabot. "What brought you out on such a night?" "6 children I've left at home behind me," said the man. "And they're shouting with the hunger. I could get no patience in listening to them. I had to go and see if I could get them something to eat, some way or another." "I only have 1 sovereign left," said the student. "Here, you take it. Say a prayer for the man who drowned in the stream at the fence of the 3 boundaries. And another thing, there will be a mass said for him in every church in the diocese tomorrow morning." The poor man went down on his knees in the water on the path and said a prayer to God for the dead. Now there was an old thatched church in Fenor at this time, situated where Mrs. Cheesy has the little wood today. When the priest turned to the congregation at the final prayer, he announced that Mass that morning was for the soul of the bag carrier. While he was talking, a white crow flew in the door, and up on the altar he went. "Are you the soul of the bag carrier?" asked the priest. "I am," said the white crow. "Was it myself that freed you?" asked the priest. "It was not," said the crow. "Then who was it who freed you?" asked the priest. "It was that man that went down on his knees in the water on the path in Fenor last night," said the crow. "From his heart came the prayer that saved me." And that is the end of the story of the bag carrier. So now I just want to quickly catch up with everyone in the chat. Sweetie, that's right, Waterford Crystal. It closed in 2009. Yes, Waterford Crystal. That's what it's in modern times was known famous for. I've got family in, as that was mentioned in one of the stories, in Dungarvan, as you heard me mention there earlier. I also have family in the Stradbally area of Waterford. So I'm just going to leave it there. I just want to give anyone an opportunity to ask any questions. Those of you who are still with me. As I say, this is something I wanted to do. It's not my normal routine, but I just wanted to put something together. And as I say, it was sort of something that I decided quite recently. Yeah, absolutely. I know ALV will be on later. He does things similar to this with his ghost stories. He'll be on later. So that will be, I believe it's 8 p.m. So if he's there or if someone's there, they might be able to confirm that. Excellent. Okay, I'm just going to... Thank you, Susanna. I appreciate support. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for your kind words. This is good stuff. All good learning history. I might come back and do some more Irish folk tales. Potentially, I might even do something more geographically and history on Ireland as well. That is the Celtic cross. That's the symbol. That's the main symbol on the thumbnail that represents the Celts. Thank you. Thank you, Gina. And another thing, sweetie, another person who'll be able to confirm that is Paulie, because Paulie's a Celtic supporter. And if you look at the football team, the soccer team, they have that. They did have that cross. I think they still have it as their badge. Do I know much about the Cotswolds? Yes, I did. I went there last year and the year before. I was there in the Cotswolds. I went there for 2 long walks. It's a lovely place out there, especially in the summertime. You can go on there, and if you like that sort of thing as well, there's you can do pit stops at pubs and have their traditional stout and ale. It's really, really nice place, the Cotswolds. In fact, Cheltenham Racecourse is not too far from there. Love to hear something about them too, if we can. Yeah, I could do that. I could do something about the Cotswolds. I'll do that for you if there's the interest is there. Absolutely. I'll definitely do that. Okay. So, those of you that are there, if there's any further questions, I'll pause a minute. I like to also do this as well. I'll drop this in the comment section. If anyone would like to join me on the panel for a few words, you may. Appreciate that, Gina. I really do. Thank you. Thank you. It's good stuff. Okay. I have to come to compel potatoes. Yes. You mean peel potatoes? Well, that's Ireland. Remember the potato famine? Yeah. Potatoes and poaching. Okay. Excellent. Okay, everyone. Well, if we've got no more questions, no one wants to join me on the panel for a talk, then I will say thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. And hopefully you'll all be able to join me on my next live. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. God bless.